The River Nile is the world's longest river, and its waters nurtured the people who built the pyramids. Perhaps you've heard this famous saying, Egypt is the Nile, and the Nile is Egypt. But have you ever wondered why? Well, because Egypt's map is more like this than this. More than 102 million people call this place home, and a whopping 95% of them live either along the Nile or in the Nile Delta up north, where the river spills into the Mediterranean Sea. Now here's the fascinating part. When you view Egypt from space at night, there's no other country whose population pattern stands out as clearly as Egypt's. The Nile, lit up like a bright band, weaves through a vast, dark desert, the Sahara. There are 11 African countries in the Nile basin, and almost 280 million people live there. So the Nile is like a lifeline for Northeast Africa. And the cool fact is that the Nile is the only major river that flows from south to north, bringing water from the Great Lakes to countries in that region. It's like a magical source that brings life to dry lands. But for Egypt, it's super crucial, because almost 97% of its water comes from the Nile. Without the Nile, Egypt would simply die in the sun-baked Sahara. Now let's talk about why Egypt and Ethiopia have been fighting over the Nile for years and what's Ethiopia's evil plan. Actually, Ethiopia is building a huge dam called the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, or GERD, along the Blue Nile that contributes over 85% of the Nile stream flow. Once it's finished, it'll be the most powerful hydroelectric dam in Africa, creating a reservoir larger than Greater London. Ethiopia is spending around $5 billion on it, but it might end up costing even more. For years, Egypt has been trying to get Ethiopia to sign a treaty about sharing water from the Nile, but these talks didn't work out, and now tensions are only rising. This is a clash between what one side sees as a vital necessity and the other views as an existential threat. Let's explore how. The Renaissance Dam, as the name suggests, aims to boost Ethiopia's economy. It'll provide electricity to millions of Ethiopians. That's a significant deal, since currently around 75 million people lack access to the power grid. Over the next few years, the dam is projected to generate a whopping 6,000 megawatts, surpassing Ethiopia's current generating capacity of only 4,000 megawatts. That's good news for Ethiopia because it can sell the extra electricity. But for Egypt, this dam will be catastrophic. Egypt depends on the Nile for almost everything, and any disruptions to its flow are obviously a major worry. But the biggest worry is how fast Ethiopia plans to fill its dam reservoir. According to an Al Jazeera report, if Ethiopia takes 10 years to fill it, Egypt's water supply would drop by 14% and 18% of its farmland would be ruined. If the process speeds up to 7 years, 1/3 of Egypt's farmland would be lost, and a rapid 5-year filling could destroy 50% of Egypt's farmland. So, Ethiopia's ideal plan for filling the dam quickly is Egypt's worst nightmare. There is an age-old debate about who owns the Nile. Back in 1929, Britain and Egypt made a treaty that basically said Egypt and Sudan get all the rights to the water in the Nile River. Egypt even got veto power over any projects in the Nile or its smaller rivers in the 10 other Nile countries. In return, Britain kept control over the Suez Canal. Ethiopia, which was free from colonial rule at the time, didn't have a say in this treaty. That's why Ethiopia doesn't think this old deal is fair, and they've been saying for years that they have the right to build dams on the Blue Nile in their own land to generate more power. And in 2011, when Egypt was going through political turmoil during the Arab Spring, Ethiopia decided to start building the dam. Since then, Egypt has been trying to stop the project, and the idea of a possible military conflict has always been hanging around. In 2018, the person managing the Ethiopian dam, Simegnu Bekele, was found dead. People got really upset because it was initially said that he was shot in broad daylight. This led to protests. Eventually, authorities said he took his own life. In 2019, Ethiopia's Prime Minister, Abiy Ahmed, got pretty serious, saying nothing would stop them from building the dam. He even mentioned that if there is a need to go to war, we could get millions readied. If some could fire a missile, others could use bombs. Ethiopia filling up the GERD's reservoir could harm Egypt's water and agriculture, leading to more unemployment. Egypt wants Ethiopia to take a long time, like 11 to 21 years, to fill up the reservoir. However, Ethiopia is hesitant because it means delaying electricity production, causing massive losses and slowing down development. After the dam's completion in 2020, Ethiopia decided to start filling it during the rainy season in July. It is set to finish filling the reservoir by around 2027. The situation with the Nile and the dam in Ethiopia is pretty complex. Ethiopia has been filling up the dam's reservoir without talking to its neighbors, especially Egypt. This could set a precedent for more dams being built without any negotiations with other countries in the future. The GERD is mainly for producing hydroelectric power, not for irrigation. This means that once the reservoir is full, Ethiopia says it won't limit the water flowing downstream to Egypt. But Ethiopia could build more dams in the future for irrigation, as its prime minister claims. Looking at the situation, Egypt has a tough call to make. They could either sit back and see what happens with their instability, or consider a military move against Ethiopia and the GERD. Now, there's a hypothetical scenario where Egypt might think about using its air force to destroy the dam and solve their water problems, which it has to do sooner or later.
Because Egypt is not going to be able to live that way, and they'll end up blowing up the dam, and I said it, and I say it loud and clear, they'll blow up that dam.
But if Egypt does that, it's like declaring a big war on Ethiopia. The dam, worth $5 billion and more than a decade's work, would be gone. Egypt might also face punishment from other countries, like sanctions. So while it could fix Egypt's water issue in the short term, the long-term consequences look pretty bad. And Sudan is kind of stuck in the middle of this whole situation. Egypt is like Sudan's political friend, but Sudan is actually supporting the Renaissance Dam that Ethiopia is building. Why? Well, because it's going to give them cheaper energy and help with controlling flooding. But they have failed to figure out some tough questions, like what happens when there's not enough rain? Will Ethiopia think about Egypt needing water? And when is a drought officially a drought? These talks are getting messier because more dams are on the horizon. Populations are booming, and the climate is changing. So the Nile and its water supply are turning into something worth arguing over and are demanding a peaceful negotiation. If you have any possible solutions to resolve the Egypt-Ethiopia Nile dispute, please share your thoughts in the comments. And thanks for watching.